This is Gravenstein Castle, or the Stone Castle, the Castle of Counts in Bruges, Belgium. It's one of
Oh, cool.
my favorite sites.
It's in Bruges.
Yeah, just right in the middle. You can't miss it.
That was a reference to the film.
What film?
You need to see the movie.
You need to say the
It's
title of the movie. What's the movie?
I just did. It's called this is like a comic routine. It's called In Bruges. There's a movie called In Bruges. I'm Michael,
I'm Chris.
and we're Breaking Impossible.
Yes, we are.
Recently, we've been talking about biological age and longevity science, but that's really not what we're about. What we're about is doing hard things. And like I say at the end of every video, going outside and continuing to move forward with whatever our goal is.
I think for me, the thread is doing more of whatever you're doing, wherever you are, enjoying
Right?
it as much as possible, with ultimately the goal of leading a healthy lifestyle for what is the word we
Health
not long
span.
health span. Thank you. I was going to say longevity, but health span. I always forget health span. The theme, if you ask me, is if we can do it, anybody can do it. And you don't have to go to anywhere special. Wherever you are is already very cool. And that also explains the spin-off little featurette that I've started doing called It's in the Signs, which is just exploring some of the nature and or history and or special features of your
Mhm.
locale. So look for an article sometime soon, sort of going into some of this, but what do you think? Is that the kind of the theme from your perspective?
Yeah, and also in addition to exercise and diet and a little bit of travel, we've talked about technology. And recently, you and I both have been making a move towards using less of it. And interestingly, Andre, the founder of Four Trails, has recently changed the rules and no longer allows smartwatches out on the trails for his challenge.
Yeah.
And so I've been here in Hong Kong to learn the trails better in anticipation that this was about to happen. In fact, I had gotten rid of my watch collection and got myself down to a very simple Timex, which is my
Oh,
only watch. No, I quit drinking 2 years ago, so I've proved to myself at least that I have the capacity to change even at my advanced age.
your
And
advanced
watches are
age.
something that, yeah, watches are something that I've spent too much time and money on in the past. And so getting rid of that saves me a lot of time. I can focus on things like my health and other things. So I had anticipated that Andre would do this. And I'd also been trying to get away from my smartphone as much as I can do. I'm trying to spend less time looking at screens, even though I'm recording a YouTube video. And so, anyway, one of the reasons I've come to Hong Kong is to help out with Four Trails for the fourth year, but also so I can learn the trails because I expected that we wouldn't be allowed to use GPX or GPS watches. And that is the case. This year, the notification of when the start time would be got shorter. And this year, are no watches. And there's a possibility of no phones, no smartphones next year, although that's up in the air. Andre hasn't made up his mind yet. But
It's
anyway, as a
probably
result, okay.
sorry. I think it's sticking on the theme thing for a second. Like it's a good point to talk about like why are we so interested in the Hong Kong trails and the Hong Kong Four Trails Challenge and Andre and the rest. And so for me, I love the spirit that Andre has infused into the thing. So first of all, he sort of started it because somebody said it was impossible, and then he went and did it, and then he invited others to join him. And that's been now going on since like 2013, I think. So more than 10 years.
Mhm.
And he has slowly been ratcheting up the challenge. He specifically doesn't call it a race. It's a challenge. It's between you and the trails, as someone you were talking to recently told you, and I totally agree with. And what's interesting is his humor and sardonic wit as he talks about it. Like when you receive your qualification, it says, "I regret to inform you," dot dot dot. Right? It's
Yeah,
hilarious, and he consistently refers to it as, and now I can't get the quote right, but a pleasurable walk through the countryside,
yeah,
something like that for health and wellness or something. And he does it to promote lesser known sides of Hong Kong. Like when people think of Hong Kong, they think of Central, they think of Kowloon, they think of tall buildings, they think of all this cosmopolitan stuff. But a serious part of the territory is national park, right? Country park, as they call it, and like it's amazing. The views are amazing, and that's what triggered us. I think was the drone footage from that first Breaking Impossible, not Breaking Impossible, Breaking 60 movie, and that's part of our theme. Like, why did we pick this thing? It's because it ticks so many boxes. And so when we often talk about all the specifics and make all these lists and publish all of that stuff, the thematic part is get out there, as you were saying, do hard things, challenge yourself. You can probably do more than you're imagining, but be smart about it.
but I think you're right. I think we were already doing hard things before we saw the documentary Breaking 60, and the idea of doing hard things and being outside and what we've learned from doing both is pretty much what we've been talking about both on our blog and in our YouTube channel.
Yep. And doing it smartly,
And
right?
yes, and that's the other part of the challenge too, is to figure that out. What is that correct balance between doing enough and not doing too much? It doesn't really matter whether you finish or survive or drop out. If you participate, if you're just a part of it, that's a part of your story, whether or not you ever do anything more than that.
Yeah.
So I came to Hong Kong this trip to be a part of Four Trails as much as I could do, and to train and to learn the trails. And I've now seen the new documentary 6 times. And each time I see it, I learn something new, partly because I've been out on the trails. And one of the changes that Andre's made recently is the start time is unknown, and it may start at night, which it did this year. And this year, there were no finishers.
Which
And
for
so,
folks who don't know means you completed all the trails in under 60 hours.
yes.
That's
So
that's that's 185 miles, 298 kilometers with a huge amount of elevation in
14,500 meters.
yeah, in less than 60 hours. So just under 3 days. And in fact, at 72 hours, everyone is done. If you're not done, you're done. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So the challenge is to do all 4 major ultramarathon distance trails in Hong Kong in one go, and to do it in under 60 hours. And if you do it in under 72 hours, you're considered a survivor. And so I've gone to see this film, Four Trails, and at the end of the film, at several showings, I was able to be in the audience where there were finishers and survivors of the Four Trails from the movie who were answering questions from the audience. And each time I see the film, I see parts of the trail that I've just been on recently. So it kind of reinforces where I'm at. It's helping me learn the route by watching the movie over again. But also, I'm listening to things that the runners have said when they're being interviewed, and also what they've said when they are being interviewed in the audience at the movie theater, at the screenings. And last night was one of those. And one of the runners said something interesting. He said, we were talking about community a minute ago. He said, it's not about the individual. It's about the community. It's about the supporters. It's about the crew. It's about the runner. It's not just the runner. And the other thing is, Andre allows the runners to help one another. You're not allowed to have outside assistance, but you can encourage the other runner. And in several iterations of this event, there have been runners that were likely to finish sooner. And one runner will say to the other, you know what, I'm going to go with you and we'll finish together. And it's kind of heartwarming. And I've noticed this in the ultramarathon community. I haven't seen it so much in the shorter distances, but it seems to me
The shorter distances of a marathon.
yes, a marathon or 100 miles or more, it does seem to me that there's a different sort of mentality where people want to help one another more and they're a little bit less competitive that way. Again, it's not a race, it's a challenge. It's a challenge to see if you can finish it. And Andre's not about having the fastest no time increase every year or anything like that. And he's not deliberately making it more difficult so that that won't happen. He's just trying to keep it in the spirit of the event. And one of the runners who participated 4 times, who's in the movie, who answered questions yesterday, his name is Kenneth. He was in the 2013 event, and it was only the second year that they'd done it. Basically, Andre put on Facebook, who wants to meet me at 4 in the morning at Stanley Gap. And it was a 4 and 3 format. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but it's evolved over time. It started with trying to do 4 over 4 days and gradually got to try to do all 4 in 3 days. And so Kenneth had done it then, and he's participated, and he was the survivor this year. And he was saying to me after the screening, we were talking in the lobby, one of the runners, a guy called KK, closer to my age, has gotten permission from the boss. His wife's told him that he can do it again. He was a survivor before, and he wants to be a finisher. He's planning to do it this coming year, 2026. So Kenneth asked me, he said, is there anybody you need permission from? And I said, no, my kids are grown and I don't need permission. In fact, I quit my job a little over a year ago so I could focus on this. And he said, okay, that's good. He said, because one of the things that people underestimate is the importance of family in putting up with, supporting the person who's training for 4 trails for the entire year up to the event. Because that's really where it's going to be, whether you succeed or don't succeed, is whether you've trained enough to prepare yourself, because you still have to have enough time on feet, as they say.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really smart.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely smart. And that is among our themes, right? Try to do it smart, try to know what you're doing. What is the actual challenge? You're doing amazing things by going to Hong Kong so often and talking to all these people. My goal, I don't know your goal. My goal is to survive at 71 hours and 59 minutes. That's good enough for me.
My goal is to qualify.
Yeah. Well,
my goal right now is to do 100 miles.
Yes, of course. I think, as far as what we're talking about, what I enjoy about our interaction, well, among the many things I enjoy about our interactions is, you have a very mental approach. You're trying to gather all of this feedback, all of this other people's perspectives and knowledge, and you're building towards your own revelation. And then when that moment happens, you feel like you've reached someplace, and then how do you apply it? And that sort of thing. And so a lot of the talks that we have, you and I, are about like your latest reading on sleep, or your latest reading on diet, or your latest talk or chat with someone, and so forth. And mine's much more sort of philosophical. But what I like about it is it does remind me that, like, oh yeah, we are each facing our own trail all the time, and where we are is very, very different, and our capabilities are very, very different. And for me, it's about measuring where I am and plotting towards where I want to be. And so while our philosophies are very similar and the same, our approach and techniques are very different. And so, yeah, for example, we talk about incrementally, like that's a big deal of like the next tree, the next mile, the next step, the next whatever, and they just all add up. And yet the way you add them up and the way I add them up is suitable for each of us, which is really just us exempling, like, if we can do it, like anyone can do it. And it really is just about engaging with yourself in whatever your challenge might be. We just happen to choose this crazy hard one because why pick something easy?
Well, you wrote the blog post Incrementally Yours, and we do talk about incrementalism. And I think the example we usually use is one trail at a time.
Well, but then it goes down to one step. Yes, one section, one.
You could say one section at a time. You could even say 500 meters at a time between.
Exactly. I use this technique all the time when I'm out there and it's really hard. I'm like, just to that tree. Okay, when I'm at that tree, it's like, okay, just that tree. Okay, and then like, and before you know it, you're at the top of the peak. It's great.
It's talked about among 4Trails participants that you can't be thinking about the entirety of it or it will be overwhelming. You have to just think about the trail you're on, finishing that one, and then worry about finishing the next one, and then worry about finishing the next one. Well, and you're right. That applies to everything else that we do.
Yeah, and I like the interplay between you have to be able to do that, you have to have developed a whole picture without being, but without the necessity of holding the whole thing statically in your mind the whole time. For me, it's like there's a, because we often talk about sort of military stuff and whatever, because they are in similar situations and much more life-threatening, so to speak, or not even so to speak. But in any case, there is a phrase, planning is essential, but plans are useless, which is to say you constantly have to be thinking about the big picture and being ready and developing capabilities, but any individual plan is dead as soon as it's done because
Yeah.
circumstances have already changed. And so it
Speaking,
leads to another saying that I love, which is, strategy is for beginners, capability is for professionals.
yes, someone told me that one of the finishers or one of the survivors has said that you have to be capable and able. So it's sort of that necessary and sufficient thing.
Yeah.
So my friend Tomo, who has finished 4 trails, is trying to do 100 miles 100 times, and he's done it 77 times so far. But he told me that of the 77 times he's done 100 miles, 75 times something went wrong.
Yeah.
And this was the thing that surprised me. And this is another one of those examples of me hearing from somebody else and then trying to apply it. He said, that's where the fun is. This is the mindset he has. I'm like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, that's when it gets fun. That's when you find out what you've really got,
That
is when
I
that thing that happens that you didn't anticipate, and then you got to figure out how you're going to get around it. So remember to do hard things, go outside, and keep moving forward.
We'll see you out there.